Hi, my name's Lisa and I'm from the AFA. I just wanted to welcome you to our FASEA exam series. We know that there's many of you out there struggling to pass the FASEA exam. So we've gone out and found some advisors who are willing to share their exam experience with us, tips and tricks, and the tools and resources they found useful to help them get through the exam. The series of interviews covers off three core aspects: exam preparation, what they did during the exam, how they focused their time, and strategies to answer the questions, and mindset. So how they avoided panic and how they kept a clear mind so they could focus on the task at hand. We hope that you find some valuable insights from this series of interviews and they help you get through the exam. Joining us today, I have joining us Tim Ross from Henderson Ross in Queensland and James Ford from Economic Science in Western Australia. We're going to be talking about the FASEA exam and their experiences while sitting the exam. We're going to talk about preparation, exam format and questions, and staying in the appropriate headspace to pass the exam. So we'll start with exam preparation. So what did you find that was most useful in preparing for the exam? So tools, resources, or even following the FASEA exam guidelines. Can you tell me your top 3 tips for preparing for the FASEA exam? Tim, I'll start with you.
So I'd say take advantage of any industry support, either from colleagues who've been through it, or through other partners that you deal with regularly within the industry who want to see you succeed. So industry support, take advantage of it. Second area would be to take advantage of any practice tests that you can, both on the FASEA website, but also too, there are many other practice tests available through other parties, including industry participants. Take advantage of those and do a number of them, because some of them have different formats from some of the other ones. So you're going to find that between all of them, you'll get a pretty good feel for what the exam conditions are like. And then I would also say to take the time properly to prepare on your own or within a small group before the exam. So I took myself probably a week or 2 prior to the exam, almost every day, going through some elements of the Corps Act, the privacy principles, the FASEA code, just to make sure that I felt like I was reasonably across what was involved there as far as it applied to financial services. So they were my top 3: industry support, practice test, and take the time to prepare thoroughly.
Thanks, Tim. James, over to you.
I followed an approach of preparing my mindset for it, and that meant doing the Kaplan Grad Dip module on ethics and professionalism. Also, I did the TAL Academy day, and I think that they're very good. Also, I did a FASEA mock exam. And lastly, on the privacy principle, or not lastly, second lastly, on the privacy principles and on the FASEA code, I hand wrote them both out, because I find that reading and then writing out the answers to those particular types of codes and principles is a way I can retain the most knowledge. And the last thing I did was I made sure I knew how to use Control F when searching the documentation that we're allowed to use during the exam, and researching thoroughly that my expertise in that area was suitable to find the right answers.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on to the exam format and questions. So we appreciate that you can't refer to specific exam questions or their content. However, we believe that many advisors are struggling with being able to clearly interpret the questions. So we were just wondering how you guys broke down the exam questions to understand exactly what was being asked. Did you have a particular strategy in approaching the questions and managing your time throughout the exam?
I approached the questions from the point of view of not forgetting, always remembering that this exam was about ethics and professionalism. So as each question came up, I looked at it from that perspective, not the technical part of it, although that's obviously a part of the question, but how did ethics and professionalism impact upon a technical question, for example, aged care, or on risk insurance or whatever it might be, looking at what is the most ethical and most professional answer for that. When it came to managing my time, during the pre-reading, I worked out how many written questions there were and how many multiple choice questions there were, and I allowed 2 minutes per multiple choice. At 30 minutes and 1 hour into the exam, I measured where I should have been to where I actually was. I found I was ahead, and that way I found that I had extra time towards the end to go back and answer 3 questions that I was uncertain about.
Great, thank you. Tim, over to you.
Yes, similar to James, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect when I opened the exam to see what its format would look like. It wasn't exactly as I thought. I found that there was a lot more scenarios that were presented, and then a series of questions that related to those scenarios. Interspersed and sprinkled in amongst that were some multi-choice questions that kind of stood alone in amongst that. Really, as James said too, it was a case of just trying to see how the rules and the legislation governing our behavior would best apply in each of the scenarios, really regardless of which facet of financial services it was that were presented in those scenarios, because some of them were not really familiar to me because it was areas within financial services that I don't necessarily work in or haven't worked in the past. But the principles that apply to all of us working within financial services are pretty much the same. So just looking at that, thinking about what I'd already prepared and had come to know about the legislation, and then thinking how I best thought that that would apply, or what was the most correct application of various principles in the scenarios that were presented. So that was one area. I also knew that there was likely to be some written responses in addition to short answers or true, false, or multi-choice answers. And so when I divided the time up, I knew that I had about 2.5 minutes per question. So I tried to get through the multi-choice ones relatively quickly in each scenario, so I could spend a little bit longer on the written responses. And then when there was a written response, I tried to give more reasons. So if it said, give 3 reasons for this or that, I tried to give kind of like 5 or 6, thinking that, well, hopefully 3 of those will be the most correct. So I don't think you get penalized for giving more information. So I endeavored to give more than was asked for. I'm hoping that it met the mark, and I got through. So I didn't get any feedback, but hopefully that got me through to some extent.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on to mindset now. So as we know, mindset and being in the correct headspace can really impact your ability to perform in an exam. So I was just wondering if you had any tips around how to prevent panicking or managing exam jitters, especially when you're faced with a question that may not be your area of advice, or you don't know how to answer it. So Tim, I'll start with you.
Well, to me, the way to get over nerves as best as you can is to be well prepared. I find that in almost any aspect of life. I think if you walked into the exam and you hadn't done much preparation, it could certainly affect you that way. Like I said, I spent a couple of weeks every day going through information. That, I think, helped me not to be too nervous come exam day. The other thing that I did as well was, to be honest, just be in a quiet space before the exam and to actually see myself getting through it. I knew it was going to be a lengthy process and you couldn't stop, get bored halfway through, get distracted. You just had to keep on chugging through for the whole 3.5 hours or the 3 hours of actual exam time. So I knew that for me, a person who's quite easily distracted and whose mind wanders quite a bit, that could be a challenge. So I just had to get myself prepared, get into the right headspace, the right zone, as it were, so that I knew I just had to kind of keep on going with it as best I could. And that probably helped me. Preparation and getting into the right headspace before commencing the exam.
Great, thank you. James, over to you.
What I did was I realised that the exam was something I have to do, and I equated this experience to when I first started in the industry and I had to go and see new prospective clients who I'd never met. And this was a new process for me coming into the industry. And it was something that I had to do. I survived that, obviously, 40 years ago. And I knew that I could survive this. So I just looked at it from the perspective of, this is something I haven't done since I left school at the age of 15, and I'll give it my best shot. So from that perspective, I knew that it was an achievable target. Remaining focused during the exam wasn't hard because I concentrated on each question in the context that I've previously explained. How does ethics and professionalism handle this? I also measured my time. I finished 73 of the 76 questions with an hour to spare. I had a break. I came back. I finished off the 3 questions, and by that time I was very tired from the level of concentration, and I left 20 minutes early. So remaining focused on each question and looking at it is what I did to get through to the end of that exam satisfactorily.
Great, thank you. Now, just to close off, is there anything else that you feel might be important for advisors to know that are considering sitting the FASEA exam? James, I'll start with you.
Do the next one as soon as you can. Avoid, and secondly, avoid listening to the speculative noise that's going around the industry and will continue to go around until the end of the year. Regard November as the last exam, no matter what else you may hear. Get the next exam done as soon as you can, so you've got another shot in the locker, just in case it's needed.
Great, thank you. Tim?
I pretty much concur with James's tips there, or comments. Yep. But yeah, don't delay. Get into it as soon as you can. You give yourself then the best opportunity to get through, because we want as many advisors as possible to get through this exam, because we need to ensure that there is a good, robust advice community that can deliver great advice to more Australians. So we need to make sure that we get as many through. So don't delay, enroll today, and spend the time preparing as well as you can. And as we said, go for those tips that we talked about earlier, and together we can get.
We hope that you've got some value out of today's video. The AFA have a number of FASEA exam resources which you can access via the AFA website. If you're still not finding what you're after, or you'd like to speak to someone, please don't hesitate to contact one of us in the AFA campus team.